Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It is the daily for Friday, and it is Heisman Trophy weekend. Catch the fever. Everyone's favorite made-for-television trophy presentation is Saturday night, and Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud will be there. That is Jeremy Birmingham and Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We were initially planning to cover this weekend, and we made a calculated gamble that C.J. Stroud is not going to win on Saturday night. Bill, was that the right choice or the wrong choice?
Probably the right choice. I don't think he's going to win. I actually was somewhat surprised that he's a finalist. Not to say that he's not deserving. It just felt like it was kind of trending in a different direction for CJ over the latter course of the season. And I found it to be a very difficult Heisman sort of candidate pool to sort through. So CJ's numbers are really good, so I guess it makes sense that he's there. But no, I don't. I think we are right in our assumption that he is not going to win.
Bill, are you able to reveal who you voted for?
I am not. If I do, I will lose my vote.
Really?
Yeah,
that is crazy.
Yep. Can't even say who I didn't vote for.
I think he should risk it. Make them make them take action.
Yeah. I can name like 1,000 players you didn't vote for.
I mean, you certainly can. Yeah. I didn't.
Daquan Finn. Bill did not vote for Daquan Finn.
I didn't vote for Daquan Finn.
Strike him from the rolls.
What about Tua Tito?
You'll have to wait and see.
I knew it. So we decided that this would just be the CJ Stroud show. We don't have enough bold predictions to make at this point in the month. We're going to save those as we get closer to the Peach Bowl. So just going to sort of the legacy conversation came up a lot for CJ Stroud, obviously, after the game, and it was a real possibility that he was never going to get a chance to change that. And the Heisman, probably not going to do that. Don't think he's going to pick up that trophy personally, although maybe this vote will wind up being tighter. And the fact that Caleb Williams also lost his last game, maybe that plays in his favor. I tend to doubt it, and I think that the biggest red flag for that is that Stetson Bennett became a finalist. Tells me that a lot of people saved their ballots until Saturday and Sunday of last week and then didn't know what to do with them because they put somebody who was just the quarterback of the number one team in New York City and is probably not the most outstanding player in college football. So Bill can't name his ballot. Berman and I don't have one. I used to. The Heisman Electoral College is complicated and stupid, as all college football awards panels are. So I've had it and lost it twice, and I'm kind of glad that I don't because this year is complicated. I think Caleb Williams will probably win it, and I don't think, Berm, that's outside of the realm of acceptability.
No, I think you can make a case pretty clearly for Caleb Williams. To me, the Heisman has always sort of been like this argument between most important player, most impressive player, all these things. If USC didn't have Caleb Williams on their team this year, they probably would have won 5 games. So I think you have to put that into perspective. The same can be said with Max Duggan at TCU. And the same can be said with CJ Stroud, probably at Ohio State. You probably win 8 games with him this year. So, those are important. I think it's interesting because we are obviously aware of the fact that this has traditionally been a best quarterback on the best team type of award. But CJ Stroud lost his final game this season. Caleb Williams lost his final game this season. Max Duggan lost his final game this season. It's like, how do you really pick? To me, the best player in the country all year, and I've told Bill this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this on the drive back from Maryland, I think Bijan Robinson is the best college football player in the country. I think that he is a guy that is a difference maker on any team you put him on and changes games in a way that running backs typically just can't. And so I think that he's a guy I would have voted for if I had a vote, just because I'm just that impressed by Bijan Robinson. But
Okay. I think there's a case to be made for Marvin Harrison in that regard as well.
Well, I mean, if you look at what Ohio State had to deal with this season at wide receiver, and then the unexpected, just awesomeness of Marvin Harrison, that can't be just totally ignored.
Yeah.
Right, Bill? As a Philly guy, I know you felt compelled to pull the trigger for Marv.
Well, how can Marvin Harrison be a Heisman finalist if he's not the Biletnikoff winner?
What an absolute joke that is. Holy
Who won the
cow.
Blitnikoff? They didn't announce that yet, did they?
They will
Bill's-
by the time this airs.
Bill is giving a hint that we know something that everybody else doesn't right now.
Oh.
Yeah, wrap that
Well-
around your brain, Berm. That Marvin Harrison didn't win the Blitnikoff.
Again, this is the thing. You're giving guys awards based on one game, and I don't understand how you do that. I don't understand. Like, does body of work not matter? And you can't take I don't think you should be taking the Heisman away from guys based on one game either. To try to circle it back to that award, like these votes are just really dumb. Nobody's
Yes.
watching film.
They are. Okay, so Bill, you were talking about this the other day that as we evaluate CJ Stroud, that his first year as a starter, at least statistically, and maybe in terms of intrinsic feel, it felt like he was better a year ago than maybe he was in year two. I think that's probably not a tremendous surprise when you remove Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba from the equation. But I think all of us thought, well, year two, Ryan Day gets to continue to develop him. He'll be more comfortable and confident in the offense. He'll be able to do some things that he couldn't do in his first year as a starter. And I'm not sure, as we look at it, that really wound up working out the way we thought that it would. I'm not saying that in any way to take away from CJ Stroud or the year that he had, and he's got a chance to play potentially 2 more games. But I think that's why the Heisman conversation became more wide open, because CJ didn't go out and just say, this is definitively mine and no one else is taking it.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And also, too, it ended up where I think he started getting compared to a guy like Caleb Williams, who's just like a super electric player. And I think that, like, whether you like one or the other, I think it's just a matter of preference. They're both very good quarterbacks. You just go about it much differently. And CJ has never really had the playing style that I think can captivate people in the way that is perhaps necessary to win this award. That's not to say he's not good. Like, his stats are not what they are by accident. They're that way because he's an excellent thrower of the football, and he does play in a dynamic offense with a lot of weapons. But I think some of the things that make CJ great are a little hard sometimes to actually appreciate. And then when you add that sort of to maybe the idea that there was, I don't want to say a step back, but maybe not the growth from one year to the next that maybe people expected, I think that puts him in a tough position as well. And then, you know, you lose the last game of the year, and he played okay, I think, in that game against Michigan. I don't, like we talked about the other day, I don't think he played poorly in that game, but there was an opportunity there, especially in hindsight, for him to really kind of set things ablaze there in terms of his Heisman campaign. And it just didn't happen. And then he didn't get the championship game platform that guys have used to win this award in the past. So some things kind of worked against him there. But I do think, or at least I wonder how much the thought of, well, he didn't get appreciably better this year might have impacted his candidacy.
It's crazy though, because you have to wonder, how could he get appreciably better? Like, there's really not a lot of room to go up from what he did a year ago. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is, you know, the Heisman comes down to that Heisman moment. People talk about it all the time. CJ's Heisman moment was the Rose Bowl, and it didn't. There was nothing else this season that really put that spotlight on him. You know, the Notre Dame game, the Buckeyes offense only scored 21 points. Michigan game, they only, you know, they got boat raced, and so you take these biggest moments, and you have to compare them to Caleb Williams, who's running around like Bill said, like a chicken with his head cut off, and making play after play after play that you're like, how is he doing that? He's making like Justin Fields type plays, and you're like, that's what captures people's attentions. And I do think it's sort of unfortunate for CJ in that the expectation coming into the season based on last year is just so high, but that's what he's had to deal with his entire time at Ohio State. That's why I think his legacy is going to end up being so complicated when it comes to how people remember him in Columbus.
Will it be complicated if he wins 2 games?
I think even then it will be, because he still didn't, you know, well, CJ needed someone to give him a third chance to beat Michigan. That, you know, that's what people will say. The reality is, if he walks out of his Ohio State career with a national championship trophy, that certainly helps cement a legacy. But the fact, coming in on the heels of what Justin did and what Dwayne did, and then doing what he did a year ago, you know, the standard is the standard, but like, that's not the standard. The standard is not 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. Like that's exception. That's exceptional. That's the standard is be a first round type player at quarterback at Ohio State. And he's certainly been that. So like you can compare what he should be versus what people want him to be. But the reality is he's going to be one of the top 2 quarterbacks taken in this draft and a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And all these things are huge, but like, what are we trying to stack him up against? I think is the issue.
I don't know that he's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Not to veer this conversation, of course, but
this is
conversation is all about CJ. There is no off course unless you start talking about, I don't know, Lemon Perfect, which is delicious.
Well, Lemon Perfect is delicious. What flavor are you working with there?
This is the new kiwi star fruit.
I was going to say, I haven't seen that one before. It looks delicious.
Try it at your local Kroger.
CJ's definitely going to be a first round pick. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 pick.
Is this based on your opinion that that other quarterbacks other than Bryce Young are going to be taken ahead of him?
I think his lack of playmaking ability is going to be the thing that puts a little bit of a ceiling on that. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Tom Brady isn't a playmaker. Peyton Manning wasn't a playmaker. Sometimes you just need a guy that can stand in the pocket.
The 2 best quarterbacks of all time were not playmakers.
Right. I mean, you need guys that can stand in the pocket and throw a football. Is that not still the position requirement?
There does seem to be, to Bill's point, a shift in philosophy at the NFL level that they need to adapt to more of the college game. And that's why I think Bill might look at what Jalen Hurts is doing as an example and say, hey, these guys are very good athletes. They've worked in these kinds of systems.
Yes.
And there aren't a bunch of Jalen Hurts out there. But
yeah, that's not Bryce Young. I mean, so
I know. If Bryce Young goes ahead of CJ Stroud, to me, that sounds crazy because for years and years and years, the NFL has made it pretty clear. They prefer high-end arm talent over that diverse athleticism. And you've seen the injuries and all the other things and Mike Vick, washing out, not winning a Super Bowl, whatever else. Like that's why we want someone who can throw. And CJ is that. But I think Bill is probably right that teams are going to talk themselves in to Bryce Young and ahead of CJ Stroud. And to me, that doesn't seem like the smartest strategy. But
yeah, I don't actually have a problem with taking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. I think Bryce Young is the best quarterback in college football. That's just my opinion. Obviously, though, when you project him to the NFL, he's small, and CJ Stroud is not. So, and Bryce does move around a little bit better. He's really good escaping the pocket. CJ's shown this year that he has the ability to move around the pocket. Now, obviously, he's not running the ball for 100 yards a game like Fields and Hurts are. But, I mean, I think it's just a weird standard. Again, we're going back to this idea of like, what is a quarterback's job? And the job is to win football games, however it takes. So, CJ is, as we know, and have been trying to tell people, he's much more athletic than he gets credit for because Ohio State doesn't want him to run the ball. I don't think it's a situation where he can't do it. If he goes out in his pro day and runs a 4.7, people are going to be like, "Well, really? That's kind of crazy." I'm surprised, but that's just not the style of quarterback he is. Doesn't mean he can't do it.
I think it's an interesting point. No, I think he could be onto something there. And Austin kind of made the point in the piece that he wrote on OhioState.Rivals.com on Thursday about CJ running and how perhaps there is something at play here where because Ohio State doesn't ask him to do it, frankly, probably doesn't want him to do it that much. He just never has grown comfortable doing it. But that's not to say that there's a lack of ability there. So maybe that is something that he can tap into at the next level when teams don't put those kind of parameters, I guess, on their quarterbacks. Because he was a good basketball player. He's a big, strong kid. I don't know if people maybe appreciate kind of how big CJ is. He's a like prototypical NFL sized quarterback who I think can move quite well. But there's also a feel thing to it too that at times I feel like is lacking a little bit for him, which is again like he's a really good quarterback. He's going to be a first round pick. If he was anywhere outside like the top 12, I think I'd be pretty shocked. But I don't think he's like a slam dunk top 5, and I don't think he's going to be like number 1 overall because of some of this stuff.
How high was Mac Jones drafted? Can someone refresh my memory?
15th. Is that right?
Yeah, middle of the first round.
And Trey Lance went 3rd, right? A guy
yes,
who
and Zach Wilson went number 2 instead of Justin freaking Fields.
Oh yeah,
All
you
I'm
can
saying-
overthink it. Yeah, you can.
All
definitely
I'm
overthink
saying is that the quarterback position is one spot where generally you will talk yourself into making a decision on a guy more than talk yourself out of it, I think. And except, of course, for Justin Fields for some reason, because a lot of teams talk themselves out of that based on God knows what. But I just think CJ's overall game and his the way he'll interview, the way he will be able to get up on the board and show things and show complex, passing tree knowledge and all of that stuff, I think he's going to be a better NFL player than college player, to be honest.
There's really no way for me to prove my theory that Bill talked about with CJ. Like, it's clear that he doesn't have the feel for it, and how much of that can be coached, how much of that I believe strongly, like many other people do, not just me, that life and every part about it is about reps. And Ohio State is not specifically training him to get those reps as a runner and as a scrambler. And in fact, they're pretty actively coaching him not to do that, to protect him physically, to protect their franchise quarterback physically, for one, and for two, to take shots down the field and maximize the passing attack. I think Bill's done a great job illustrating the number of times that CJ has extended plays behind the line of scrimmage. And he's much better at that in year 2 than year 1, if we're looking for the areas where he did improve. But I know everyone sees the green space or the free first downs that he's not taken this year. And they say, well, he's going to have to do that against Georgia. And I say, yeah, that may be true when it's in a championship do or die situation. I don't believe that CJ is not athletic enough to do it. And I definitely don't believe that he's unwilling to do so. We've certainly seen that when he had to do it, which we didn't expect against Northwestern, he did. And then as soon as that game was over, and a couple of days later, I asked Ryan Day, well, you have this on film. Is it a matter of just doing this 4 or 5 times a game might help the offense? Well, what did he say? I still think there's a risk reward there where we want our quarterback to be healthy, and immediately pushed back on that. It's been this break glass in case of emergency situation, and they still just never really did. And I don't think that that's the right way to develop it. And he can't just flip a switch. Oh, we're playing Michigan. Now it's time for me to run. If you're not trained to do that on a week in, week out basis, I don't think you're going to be good at it. And so I don't know necessarily that even with a month, that means he's going to be very good at doing it against Georgia. That's just not his skill set. And Ohio State, I'm not saying the way that they've developed their coaches is wrong, because they kept him healthy. And you can ask USC if they wish they had done it differently with Caleb Williams, or even this year when Bryce Young got hurt at Alabama. Like, if your starting quarterback gets hurt, guess what? That's a bigger problem than not getting 1 or 2 first downs.
Yeah, and if you think back to Justin Fields, ask yourself how many quarterbacks in the country could have taken the type of physical punishment he did and come out of it.
Well, that's even an example there too, Berm. Like, he wasn't the same guy
right
against Alabama because he got drilled getting a first down against Clemson.
Yeah. It's a weird spot to be in. But again, I think that sort of encompasses CJ's entire career at Ohio State. The perspective that you view him through can be any different one you choose. It's sort of a choose your own adventure with him, because of what other guys did and the way his career started with the loss in his second start and the loss to Michigan. And then you have the rally in the Rose Bowl. And it's like, holy crap, this guy can do anything. And then all of a sudden this year, the offense took a step back in pretty much every sinsingle category over a year ago. And you wonder, how is that possible when you have the first 3-year quarterback in Ryan Day's tenure? Like, how does it go? How does it take a step back? And then depends on which way you want to look at that. Well, you lost Garrett and Chris and Jackson, or, well, you have Marvin and Emeka, and these are all 5 stars. What's the problem? Like, I think it's just a really bizarre character study and how you view a player's legacy. And that's why I said earlier, I think it's just complicated with him.
Did you actually like Choose Your Own Adventure books? I thought they sucked.
Not a fan.
Because really, when you came to,
I'm the 9th of 11 children. Every Choose Your Adventure book that I had in my house growing up had already had all the adventures chosen, believe me.
Well, but I think that's the problem. Like, you really couldn't choose your own adventure. You made like one bad decision after the first time it tells you to flip to page 73 and you're dead. They're telling you there's only one right adventure. Like, come on. That's not reality.
Yeah, choose your adventure and, light the book on fire and become a pyro. There you go. Chose that path. I did not become a pyromaniac.
I didn't know that was one of the options.
That's a word that doesn't get used much anymore. I don't think enough people identify as pyromaniacs.
You're asking for more. You want more pyro?
I just think that I'd like people to be upfront about their pyromania if they are in possessing it. You know what I mean?
You think that there's just a lot of closet pyromaniacs out there?
Probably. There's a lot of people who just like to burn things.
You ever find yourself like staring at a candle, just like mesmerized by the flame, and think to yourself, like, "Am I a pyromaniac?" But then don't actually do anything about it.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
What does it take to really be a pyromaniac? What's the standard?
I think that's the biggest question. What is the level of affinity for flame that you have to possess to earn the title of pyromaniac? Because I think everyone kind of likes fire. It's cool, right? Like, you like to sit by the fire and watch it dance in the wind. But to be the guy who's like, you know what? I don't just like it, I freaking love it. Like, you really have to have a metric to determine that. I'm sure there's a test out there somewhere.
I think once you progress to setting the fires yourself, that's when it becomes a pyromania in its purest form.
That's the standard. The standard is the standard.
Elite.
I think the problem with being a closet pyromaniac is that you can't live very long.
Yeah, especially if you're setting fires in the closet.
That's right.
That's difficult to get out of.
Hard to breathe.
And it's difficult for CJ Stroud to get out of these conversations about his future and his legacy. I think, and this is sorry about that detour, folks. Don't know what happened there.
It's Freaky Friday.
I honestly believe if we lived in a different time in college football, that there's a chance that CJ Stroud would return next year, because I think that there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that players who have 20 starts in college, they don't really oftentimes develop the way they would like to in the NFL. And I think that Ohio State would be better served by having him back. And I think he'd be better served by coming back for another year to continue to grow his game. I know he's not going to, but like, it's just one of those things where you wish things were the old way sometimes.
It's kind of crazy. It feels like this would actually be the era that's more likely to get those quarterbacks to stay, because
he's making $2.5 million a year at Ohio State.
Yeah. And where is that? Is that Wake Forest, where their starting quarterback goes into the portal and their coach is like, well, we think he's going to go to the NFL draft, but there may be a school that offers him enough money to stay in school for another year. So he's in the portal. We just know he's not coming back to Wake Forest. That doesn't necessarily apply to a first round draft pick like CJ, but I think this era does lend itself more to those guys staying in college as quarterbacks, but that's also a pretty wild divergence from our main point.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What is the main point? The Heisman's this weekend.
I don't know. Yeah.
CJ Stroud likely is not going to win, but he's definitely earned the right to be there for the second year in a row. And I think people should, no matter what happens against Georgia, be really, really happy that on signing day in 2019, it was CJ Stroud picking Ohio State and not picking Georgia, because he woke up that morning and had a decision to make and picked the Buckeyes, over the Bulldogs that day. And think about how different the last couple of years could have been for Ohio State if that wasn't the case. You'd have Emory Jones.
You say that as ESPN Chiron is going across my screen saying Jack Miller starting for Florida in the Las Vegas Bowl. Interesting.
First career start for Jack. I hope he does well.
Yeah. I likewise think that CJ is a deserving Heisman finalist. Part of that is kind of the weird year, but he's had really good moments this year. The statistical production, it's kind of crazy. Like, his production is down. If you, I don't know, go and rank like the best seasons for a Power 5 quarterback like in the last 20 years, and like CJ's season this year is probably still like top 20.
Yeah,
all the time. We're like, what's wrong with him? So, right. He's had really good moments. And probably some ones I'm sure he wants back. And I know people aren't in love with what he said after the Michigan game about that not defining the team. But it was kind of a weird thing. Like, he said one loss doesn't define us, but then most of that comment was about how it kind of did define him. So I think he is sort of in tune with that, and not maybe as dismissive of the idea as people might think or want to believe or want to label him. But he's got a really incredible opportunity here to, I guess, rewrite that and leave Ohio State fans with perhaps a different perspective on his career, which is interesting.
I have a question for you, Bill, as a Heisman voter, while we're just riffing here. There's obviously 4 quarterbacks that are going to the Heisman finalist showdown, the show. CJ's the only one that plays in any sort of weather that's even potentially inclement ever. Like, does that matter? Do people need to pay attention to that? I mean, if you look at, I'm more and more annoyed with college football and awards and all this stuff, because I don't think they take into consideration how different playing football is above the Mason-Dixon line after the middle of October. And I think that, like, it's natural that stats drop. It's natural that production goes down because it becomes way, way harder to play the game. And that's not, you know, I'm not even talking about a hurricane like we saw at Northwestern. I'm talking about just a basic 35-degree day when you're playing at, you know, Maryland, it's 28 degrees. It's different.
Or the
should
Indiana
that be,
game.
Yeah. Should that be something people are paying attention to?
Probably. I don't think the Heisman voting populace is all that discerning. That probably comes into play with more of the regional voting. People who are based in the Midwest probably take that into account much more than someone in the South or out West would. But I think by and large, you're kind of getting to a larger problem with this, is that there are too many Heisman voters and not enough of them watch college football with their critical eye. They just sort of show up.
Well, some of them
in the season.
Some of them cover baseball, Bill. I mean,
many of them don't even cover college football. Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole lot going on with the process. But I think because it is such a widespread vote, because people voting watch college football to varying degrees, that kind of thought process probably doesn't enter the conversation as much as it should.
Well, it should. Who did you vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Barry Bonds.
Michael Jack Schmidt.
He's already in. But you mean the best third baseman of all time? Yeah, he's already in.
Yeah,
really. Larry Wayne Jones is in. You're right. Great point.
But really, Barry Bonds not being in the Hall of Fame is stupid. Like, are we really? Can we get over it? That's all I'm asking. America. Let's move on. Okay, he was the best player in baseball before he ever took any performance enhancing substance. Period. He was already the best player in baseball. He was already the best player in baseball. He won 3 MVPs when he was a stick figure in 1991 and 92. Like, get over it.
This went exactly how I intended. Starting with CJ Stroud and ending with Barry Bonds in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
It's so bad. It's so dumb. You know what? While we're at it, NCAA, if you're out there, which I don't believe you are, can we just give Jim Tressel back his 11 stupid wins that he took away? Because really, this is what we're doing now. Let's be real. Okay, we got Gene Smith publicly asking people for money for players, and yet we still have to strike Jim Tressel's wins in a Sugar Bowl against Arkansas in 2010. Like, this is so stupid. Thanks, everyone. You ruined it.
And thank you all for joining us on the Podcast Daily, a Freaky Friday edition. A strange one, as always, but we thank you for joining us as you have been in increasing numbers recently. We sincerely appreciate all the support for the podcast and OhioState.Rivals.com. For Berm and Bill, I am Austin. We will see you all later.